back for another edition of The Journey, this time around joined by yet another new guest from within our region, and we love learning about new people and I guess their journey. That's the whole concept. Rowly Milhinch is the owner and winemaker at SCION Wines in Rutherglen. How are you, Rowly?
I'm great, thanks, Kev. How are you?
Really good. Thank you so much for coming by to tell us a little bit about yourself, and I guess your business is usually where we start. So, winemaker, interesting career.
Yeah, it is. It's great. I love it. It's challenging. It relies on the weather, the season, and place. As winemakers, we grow grapes to describe where we are, but then it's about customer relations. It's about helping that wine that you craft find its customer and the customer find it. And it's running a small business as well, which has got all the tricks and turns that you could imagine, and that itself is also good. I think what really binds it all is challenge, which is in my DNA. I love challenge and meeting it. So for me, it's a really fulfilling career.
We often start with a bit of heritage to the area. Have you grown up in the wine growing region around Rutherglen, or is it something that's attracted you to the area?
It's sort of found me. I grew up in Melbourne. I was there working. I went through schooling there, and then professionally I went through a uni and became a graphic designer. So I was doing design and marketing for some years. I was freelancing for quite a while, which I loved and still do. However, Rutherglen, there was a call to region through my family history, which was the Morris family, who back in the late 1850s, George Francis Morris, who's my great-great-great-grandfather, he established Fairfield Vineyard in Rutherglen, which became, within 30 years, the biggest producing winery in the Southern Hemisphere. Quite an amazing and inspirational fellow. He was a vigneron, winemaker, business person. He took trade of Rutherglen wine to the UK and helped establish export for region. And that, I guess, family narrative took me to Rutherglen and really engaged me with the region beyond what is our own challenge with our own business. Beyond that, there's a lovely, greater story that I hold quite dearly to help motivate me and push me along.
Yeah, right. So, what was it? Just a trip for a weekend or something, and you had this brainwave?
No, not quite that romantic, actually. So, while I was still in Melbourne, Mum had moved up about, I think, maybe 5 or 6 years before it turned out I would, and she established a tiny 8-acre vineyard on a 40-acre farm that we bought. There was nothing there, and to establish that in the romantic hope that by essentially semi-retiring, growing grapes and selling it to whoever might find premium fruit appealing at the time, that was the dream. But then, of course, the grape glut hit in the early thousands, just as our vines were established to the point of maturity and production. And to sell fruit at that stage would not cover costs of running your tractor or any inputs, essentially. So the next logical step was, how then can we make this dream continue? And it's to add value to that product, which of course is wine, when we think about what we're growing grapes for in this sense. So to then redirect that initial journey was to call upon me. And I remember I was sitting at my desk in St Kilda. I was working in a small agency then, and I was a couple of levels up, had this great view of Barclay Street, working away. And ping, in comes the email, and it's a fake contract from Mum saying, hey, would you mind coming up and maybe building this dream that I've had with growing grapes to maybe put it into a fully fledged business space of winery, and do you want to come up and help? I thought, no way, that's crazy. Like, I'm happy down here, I'm loving it. Got a great, it's my home really. But one thing led to another, and I'll never forget, when I was studying design, there was a lot of inspiration flying around, as you could imagine. It's a pretty creative space. And I remember one of the strengths of being, I think, a successful designer or creative is to take challenge and convert that into something really purposeful and forward considered. And that challenge is what makes you successful. And to not take that on is not, I think, a sign of competent thinking and confident thinking and successful thought. So I said, all right, let's have a go. There was, I guess behind that is this little mantra around to risk nothing risks everything. I remember reading that years ago, and it's always been with me. And so with that on my shoulder and this opportunity, which sounded ridiculous, like I had no idea, like to live on a farm, leave all my mates in town, I'm crazy, but why not? Like I was 23, to return from a failed attempt back to what I did, or to decide it wasn't for me and come back. No risk really when you think about it. I mean, compared to say now where we're established as a family, we've got 2 young kids, business, we have staff. The change there is, in this instance compared to then, is a much different risk proposition. So then it was like, of course, why not, once I got my head around it. So it was a really interesting transition. It took probably the best part of 3 to 4 years physically and mentally to be in Rutherglen full time. And at that stage too, the business was evolving to the point of being able to have its own label and identity. So that's branding, after bottling wine, working out your market and then how you're going to sell the stuff, which for us was cellar door. We established that as our main channel of income and sales. And so once that process of 3 to 4 years after decision making to move had happened, then here I found myself full time in Rutherglen, a small hamlet in northeast Victoria, knowing not many people. Played a few seasons of footy, bought a dirt bike, and all of a sudden, I've got best friends everywhere. And so that's how my journey to the northeast began.
That's fantastic. So in amongst that, I had a burning question around, were you a winemaker? Did you know how to make wine?
No,
you're a graphic designer. So when Mum said, come and do this.
No idea. The first few years we were establishing, we had, and it's fairly common, we had wine made by contract by a local producer. Yeah. And I guess whilst now I hold that position of winemaker, fundamentally the fruit's what makes the wine. And so for us, even though when we established we weren't competent, didn't have the skills nor the facilities to turn that fruit into something delicious, the view then, and it still is now, that 90+% of the work is what you've done in your field, your paddock, to grow amazing grapes, because of course that's what translates absolutely into that finished wine. So a few years into the journey of the winemaking, knowledge start to come to the fore. I sought some help. I'm essentially self-taught, but I had 2 mentors early on who are very accomplished winemakers who said, just don't do that. That's bad. But these are things you could do. We always had a really clear vision as to where we wanted our wine to go with respect to how it looked and felt, and that, of course, coming back to having a design background and a marketing background, is who's the audience. But within that, and I think uniquely to being a vigneron, a grower, producer and a seller of wine, is how do you decipher who the audience is, or rather how do you correlate the audience to your paddock, what you've grown? Because one of the challenges is not to necessarily make wine to vogue or trend. You can't just replant and then the next year you've got a new variety. That's a long 2 to 5 year process. So by then you're probably on to the next vogue or trend. It's how do we make the resource we've got, which is consistent and it's one thing, then appeal. And that's the nuance of, I guess, the winemaking, growing, and of course the business. But yeah, it's been quite an interesting journey to become a winemaker, because it's been lots of problem solving and so many mistakes, which have turned to be great learnings.
Let's talk about the work that's taken then, because I'd imagine that's probably been pretty hectic and 7 days a week.
Yeah, I'll try not to labour on talking about it too much, because I'll start to fall asleep telling you, because it makes me feel really tired.
Yeah.
But look, it's been next level. I was only saying to some good friends, some old schoolmates who came up to Rutherglen a few weeks ago, known them for 25 years, and that annual visit came around the other week, and they said, they've seen the whole journey, because coming up every 6 or 12 months, they've seen the business grow, and the commitment then, which was 8 days a week essentially, 10 plus hours a day. If you're out of bed at 6, which is usual, and have dinner by 8 o'clock, you're sort of doing pretty well for those first 10 years, every bit of that. Now to the point where we could catch up with them, take our kids to the park together, not stress, given it was a Saturday, Sunday, and we'd staff that weekend, which I've been working that for 15 years. To be in a position to staff that, for me, was a reminder of how far the business has grown, because it's a big effort for small business, and I suppose those listening who have small business might appreciate that to work in it as a self-employed person is one thing, but then to grow the business to the point where you can employ others to do that, it's a really massive step. It was for us anyway. So I think, the journey started with so much work.
And for some people, it's being able to let go once they get to that point, you know what I mean? And actually stepping back and trusting someone else that you've trained or imparted the knowledge on them.
Absolutely. And I think part of the journey, it's not just been professionally learning how to grow great grapes and make, yummy wine. It's been, how does the business grow as well with this knowledge? And much of it has been observing other businesses, listening to other people, older and wiser, younger and more energized or whatnot, and considering the decisions they've made and how they might practically work for us. And in that, and one of the first things I remember witnessing was meeting some people who've been doing what we've done for a very long time and are still doing it 7 days a week. And I thought, that's not sustainable. If we want to have a family and if we want to let our other interests be part of our life too, our hobbies, travel, whatnot, how do we write ourselves out of some of these daily tasks and allow someone who's passionate and probably would do it better than us to do it, and then focus back on that, real core, unique part of how we fit into the business. In my instance, it's making that wine and directing how the grapes are grown. So, it's been a lot in that to unpack.
Yeah,
and certainly, letting go in many areas has been an important thing to do.
I'm picking up already in this short conversation. Energy requirements, creativity is probably been a key to your success. Work ethic's obviously there. What do you do when you're not working? Like when you.
It's a good question. I love thinking, and I love things that help me think, and that can be art, design. That's still a big part of what I love, because that, I think, in essence, promotes us to think and consider and question. Then not thinking, that's the crucial thing. I think when we're not at work, to balance off the intensity of work is to give your mind a rest. So not thinking, skiing, cycling, fishing, outdoor stuff generally, I guess. And I think too, particularly with having little kids in our lives, what I've come back to over and over again when we've been journeying as a little family is nature. We keep coming back to nature. It's at the very core of our business, and it's important to acknowledge that nature and place is what's allowed us to get to where we have as a business, so commercially, but to help respect that and respond to that and teach our kids and share our journey with nature as a business with the broader community and our family has been core. So it's interestingly, when we've had time off and we've been working hard to make sure we do get weekends to have family time, nature's always a part of our weekends, whether it's heading to the high country, immersing the kids just in the bush, going bush for a bit, getting out the camper, meeting up with some buddies and doing that as families. It's nature is the core of, I think, how we see time out of work, but of course it is time in work as well. So it's been a really interesting thread that probably in recent years I've
great way concluded. To recharge the batteries.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, where we live, I think if, where we live in the northeast, it is nature. It's one of those amazing places where we can have, commercial interest in business, but nature's right there. It's pretty good.
What do you think your biggest achievement in life's been so far?
Getting here. I'll be 40 in next week or the week after, whenever that is. And I think to have achieved what I have, I guess, personally in that entire period, thanks to amazing parents, great guidance, good opportunities that I've made, but I've had presented, have been that. And to have journeyed to this point, knowing that, at the end of each week, there's nothing left in the tank. It's been a lot of really committed, passionate engagement with working hard and really trying to enjoy as much as what life has, because I feel really lucky to be doing what I do and to be in a position where growing up in the environment I did, that many of us do, there's so much opportunity, and I feel lucky for that. So it's to make sure that I guess conceptually is noted and I sort of I try and thank that in the back of my mind by just pushing really hard.
Anyone that you admire in life, whether it's someone famous or close to you, or
not so much famous, people, probably people who have become part of my life. You know, it's a bit cliche, but mum and dad are hugely inspiring for me. They're both such hardworking people. Both have had small business, professional small business people. That's what they've done in their careers, and both have just made opportunities. One of the other little sayings I have in my mind is, you don't make luck, you make your own luck. It's not something that exists just there. Or the other one is, you know, the harder you work, the luckier you get. I think that notion is something that, and it's never something mum and dad have independently sat me down and said, all right, son, you know, no, you make your own luck. But in watching them and observing them over, you know, how they've gone through life, they've made a lot of luck, and they've made opportunity by working hard and committing and being passionate. And I suppose that as mentoring ideas and mentors, that's crucial and key to me.
I was going to ask you about the sayings, because you're right about the luck thing. Let's go back to what you said right at the start when Mum sent you the fake contract. Right, that's really a sliding door moment almost, potentially, isn't it?
Absolutely. I can still remember the morning I opened that email.
Yeah. And what do you think would have happened if you didn't go? Let's go to Rutherglen.
I think about that every now and again. I don't know. I'd like to think I would have made a real fist of working down in Melbourne. I'd probably still be down there as in a creative field, creative and a business field of some description. And I really like to think I would have made a real effort and been as passionate and as hardworking there as I have been up here. I think you could take me anywhere and I'd offer that. That's just my DNA. I think what, again, in reflection, because it's essentially a reflective question, what I would have missed is the engagement of nature I have now, and the purposefulness I feel as someone in nature rather than someone controlling it, because I think that's a big part of where we're at in 2022 as a globe. I think respect within that space is something that I've learned, and I might not have had purely in a city environment.
Do you get the "thank goodness I'm leaving" when you go back to the city now? Do you get the?
It did happen the other day.
for anyone who's grown up in a regional area, like, you enjoy going to the city.
Absolutely.
Like, for me, I enjoy going there. But man, when I get stuck behind a truck or an accident or something that's happened there, one of the I go, "How do people do this day after day? Get me out of here quickly."
I've had the seesaw of that, because in the early days, Kev, I'd have Melbourne in the rear vision mirror just after you get past the last servos, and you know, you can see it in the background, and you think, oh no, I've got to get back up to the country. I've got to try and, you know, where are my friends? It was stressful returning to what became my new home, because I didn't know it, and the engagement was not like it is now. And I remember that I'd drive down on a Wednesday night. I'd finish work and meet my mates down on up in Windsor for a Wednesday night, and I'd drive back. You know, like
to get a taste of it.
Correct. You know, in those first years, and now it happened 3 weeks ago when I went down to Melbourne for an award thing, and I drove down, had the day there, stayed overnight, and drove back the next morning, and I had that taste of Melbourne, and I love Melbourne. It's such a great city. You know, when you've travelled around, particularly overseas, you think, wow, Melbourne is a special place. It's an amazing city, but I was glad to see the back of it when I got back up the Hume, and again, you know, you open the vents and get the fresh air coming through after that first sort of 40 minutes on the road, and you know, you breathe a sigh of relief.
We all know that feeling.
Yeah, we do.
And this is the beauty of the journey. No matter who I speak to, whether they've grown up here or whether everyone loves and appreciates where we live, right? Like, everyone would do anything for our neck of the woods.
Absolutely,
right?
But I think. And I guess I've considered that a bit over the years, because it helped me find my place up here. What I think gives us that is perspective, because if we didn't have one or the other, I don't think would have that sensation or that feeling that here's something I miss, or here's something I love, or here's something I really detest. But to have that perspective on that, going to and from Melbourne, or to and from region from Melbourne, now we know what the difference is, and we can find a place somewhere. But if we hadn't had those two polar opposite things, we wouldn't have that appreciation. And I think that's crucial to loving the Northeast now. For me, having grown up in the city, it's helped me appreciate what the country is more than maybe if I'd grown up here, unless maybe I'd returned. But then again, that's just me.
Yeah. Tough decisions Was it a tough decision to do the rural thing? Like, did you have people pushing against you? Have you had other
No.
tough decisions in life?
No, the decision was made through having a go.
Yeah.
If I wanted to have a go, the decision had to be made that way. And so it wasn't like, all right, I'll make a decision, then I'll have a go. It's like, all right, I'm going to commit to this, therefore the decision's made. So it sort of happened by domino effect of another decision. If that makes sense.
If you had your time again, would you do it differently?
Oh, well, I don't know. Probably not, because I think I like the idea that we journey. We don't have set destination. I think no matter what we do in any space of life, and I think no, I wouldn't, because the journey to this point's been so engaging. It's helped me feel good about what I do. It's helped me feel purposeful in what I do. It's been rewarding and satisfying. It's been bloody hard. That's good, you know. It's been challenging. It's fulfilled my absolute need to be pushed. And so in that, I could have been a few different things, I suppose, and there might have been other sliding door moments, as you say, along the track. But I think I always will find myself in a position where I'm pushing hard all the time. And my partner, Sally, she loves it and knows me for it, but I'm a bit exhausting sometimes, because to push and to not rest is an important part of me. So I feel, I wouldn't change it, because I find myself challenged, and that's great.
It's what you needed.
It's what I need.
Do you think Mum knew that?
Absolutely.
Do you think that was part of the fake contract? Do you think?
Well, I don't think she would have put that email across my desk if she didn't know that would be something I could fathom. And it was considered in context, because to that point I'd helped, every step of the way to that establishment. My buddies had taken off, instead of going down to Anglesey and staying at my mate's beach house and surfing for a weekend, I'd say, all right, everyone come up, we've got to plant some vines, give Mum a hand. And so for that, I knew what I was in for, to a point.
Yeah.
And I had in context where I was going to be for a longer period if I decided to do that. So I was familiar, but only to a point.
It's fantastic. And I like asking this question of people, and sometimes this is already answered by this point of the journey, right? What did you think you wanted to be as a kid? Because some people come in and go, I wanted to be a winemaker.
Yeah,
always wanted to be a winemaker. Yeah. What was your childhood dream?
It's so funny. Elkie, our 6-year-old's going through that at the moment at foundation at school, and they had a what do you want to be day dress up. She dressed up as Elsa Frozen, of course. But so again, it's something I thought about recently. I was really fascinated with flight. Yeah. I loved things that flew. And before I went down the path of design, I did a workplace training at Fisherman's Bend, RMIT Aeronautical Engineering, because I thought, I just want to build wings so stuff can fly. That's as far as I'd really got. But behind all that, there was so much creativity. I've always had a lot of that, and so I went down the path of design at Monash. But I don't know. I think still even then, I don't like the idea of things being resolute. I don't like the idea of things being absolute in a destination. It makes me feel boxed in. I think I just went with the flow a bit. Yeah. And at the time I would have considered it carefully, but it just, the field took me there.
Took the opportunity.
I think so.
Wherever it took you.
Exactly.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing, and
it's 2020.
Yeah,
it's a 2020 thing. It's a nightmare.
We've reflected on the fact that you've got young children and what have you, and we all know when we were kids, we didn't want our parents telling us what to do, or we were careful who we took our advice from. And then when you're an adult, you're like, geez, I wish I had listened to Mum and Dad.
Yep, or I sound like Mum and Dad.
I sound like Mum and Dad. What advice would you have given a younger you?
I don't know if you could give me that much advice, because I was pretty headstrong. Look, I think, and it's pertinent at the moment, because when you're formalising how you're thinking about telling your kid something, whether it's because they've been pretty rough behaving or they've been fantastic, or you're trying to foster an interest or engage them in something you want them to be interested in, you probably think about that. I don't know. I think what I got as a young person was encouragement for my passion and interest, and that was supported. And I think I would maybe make sure I did that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's something that is an amazing thing I reflect on. Being lucky to have had around me was, do it, go for it, have a go.
And you're right, because some people get that opportunity, that support in terms of family, environment, what have you, and some people don't. Doesn't mean they wouldn't be capable of achieving it, just means they haven't had that same support network.
Absolutely. So, yeah, for that, I try and really appreciate that as much as I can.
Trying to be visionary and think ahead here, writing the next part of your journey, like the next couple of chapters, 5 to 10 years from now, what sort of happened?
Oh, lots of adventures. Sally and I are really keen to put the position and allow the people that work with us, our amazing team, to own so much of what they do, so they can autonomously run much of the business and through passion, engagement, and the energy they have. We have the best team, and we can still do what we do, but journey a little more outside of the business, and that might come back to the business, those experiences. Well, it naturally will. It always has. I'd love the idea of, I don't know, taking teachers, Elkie out of school to go fishing on a Wednesday because the Reddies are going at the Hume, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's something we can do as a dad-daughter, or a little boy Jude. If we get a nice bluebird day and it's dumped during the week up at Hotham, I can sneak him out and we can, tackle a few runs together. I think if we can build our engagement and our passion around our work with our lifestyle and our family and our mates and have good balance there, that's all we could ask. It's balance, and those dreams might be once, I don't know, every 3 months we can do something like that. I think that's winning massively. That's a real win. If we can have balance, that would be fantastic. And we're getting really close to that after the hard work, which is really satisfying.
So would you say you're on track
Absolutely.
to achieving what you want? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think primarily, Kev, because I haven't set a deadline. So if we're journeying towards it, of course we're on track. I think if we know that that's where we want to go, whether we know it or not, the decisions we make will direct us there. So if I know, okay, I want to have flexibility, so one day a month I can pick something to do that isn't work related any day of the week, then I'll make decisions on a micro level every day that will affect that, whether I know it or not. So that's sort of how I think, and I feel we can definitely get there, which would be great.
Let's talk about COVID only briefly.
Yeah, yep.
We're trying to wean this out of the journey, and life in general, although it's coming back again today as always. What, I guess, has been the most challenging part for you during, I guess we've had lockdowns and things like, talk professional, I guess, impact on business if you want, or...
Absolutely. Well, it's something we've been asked a lot, and we're so lucky we've got such an amazing cohort of followers of our brand and visitors to the winery who regularly come up. And when we reopened after a hiatus of having to be closed, which was a great opportunity, we'd got a lot of renovations done and all kinds of stuff. So we tried to make it as positive as we could, and we did that. But people came back and they really, I guess, we all appreciated each other again in a way that without the break we wouldn't have maybe had perspective on. Again, coming back to perspective, that's a real theme for me in my life, is how perspective helps us feel grateful. And I think the challenges around COVID were decision making. That's crucially what it came down to, both from a business and a family level. How do we make good decisions when things are really challenging? But when it's all said and done, we found we were feeling grateful, supported, energised. We'd still achieved a lot in the business whilst we were locked down through physical changes to infrastructure back on the farm, to resolving some really good IT stuff with the business and back end, so boring work stuff. On a home level, we're able to hang out. We camped on the front lawn for 5 weeks in our tent, Elkie and I, like when we had to be closed, and we had the most amazing autumn, if you remember, in 2020. Went for weeks, so we made the most of that. I think to acknowledge it was all roses is not certainly the case. There were some really tough times, and for people who have been affected by COVID, and of course our friends, family, colleagues, customers in metro areas that had horrendous lockdown experiences. We're acknowledging that and not saying it was wonderful and that was really hard, but we made an absolute fist of having to be closed and getting stuff done, and we made sure we were busy and energised and energetic, because it was very easy to feel very low at that time. So I think we navigated it as best we could, and in the end, and I think the whole northeast, when we're able to reopen as a tourist destination again, from Barnawartha to Rutherglen to Albury to the ski slopes, I mean wherever we were in region, we saw an absolute wonderful period of people returning to region and supporting business, catching up with friends they hadn't seen for a long time, all these things, and they were great. And we got to experience that with our customers firsthand as a business and as people who live in region. I mean, that was pretty cool. So I think, it's yes, it's ongoing, but there's been a lot of challenging times, but there's been some really positive things that we would never have thought of having come out of that period.
Has it changed what you value or even your values?
It's probably galvanised them.
Yep.
I'd like to think we've always had them. It's certainly made them more... Probably the one thing it has reinforced is just how important that time with family is. Working as much as we do, like many, it's very easy to allow work to get in the way of a good time all the time, essentially, and that includes just seeing your mates once a month or catching up with your folks when there's a quiet Sunday afternoon and you've got your family chores done. And I think many of my mates anyhow shared that sentiment. I think coming out of it all, family's number one, and that was a great lesson we were taught in that challenging situation.
Yeah. Working our way towards a wrap up. Couple of fun questions. So you can have three people at dinner table with you, dead or alive, famous, loved ones, whoever you want. Who would you? What would that ultimate little intimate dinner party look like for you, Rowly?
Jeez, whoever's coming better be bringing some seriously good booze, great wine. I'd want to be having dinner somewhere amazing, on a boat somewhere, or tucked up with the snow around you in a little lodge or something. That's my vibe. Who comes along, as long as they're ticking the boxes of good food, good wine, and good location, I'm a happy chappy for sure.
Just happy to socialise and see whoever it is, learn from them.
Absolutely. I mean, naturally, and I probably should say, family, of course, and my closest friends, but fundamentally, it's the good food, wine, and friends. Tick, tick, tick.
Sweet or savoury?
Savoury.
Yeah.
Savoury. Yep, absolutely.
Have you got a dish? Have you got something you go to?
I can find more wine I love to suit it.
I love it. And you've spoken in this journey around, your weekends, priority, freeing them up, taking, seeing the roses, smelling the roses, all the rest, fresh air. What's your plans for this weekend? Is this a general weekend?
What's happening this weekend? I think we're catching up this weekend and just taking a breath. We were away seeing Dad over in the Barossa Valley last weekend, and that was fantastic. He hadn't met our little 4-month-old boy, so we had the best week last week, and we've got stuff to do at home. So I think, and it's I think, a decade ago to say you've got just pottering around at home is something you really want to do, you would never have said it. That is the most amazing time at the moment to say, let's just poke around at home. We'll definitely be going down to the park, take the kids down there. And we'll probably catch up with. We've got some great new neighbours. We'll probably have a whiskey with them, I'd say. So yeah, a bit of fun, a bit of family, I'd say this weekend.
And you're so right about just pottering around at home, right?
So
because back before there was 7-day trades and things like that, people always had the church and/or family day on Sunday and just potted around.
Absolutely.
And I think you're right. From all the lockdowns, you almost missed the lockdown component of slowing you down to potter around.
There was some solid pottering in lockdown, no doubt. We were pottering professionals then, for sure. I think absolutely.
I think this is only a relatively recent question about it, and not everybody's getting into it. But so the journey is a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything or binge watching or anything that you're into at the moment? Have you got any recommendations for people other than the journey, of course?
Well, yeah, and we had to stop watching them. We were watching a lot of like Nordic noir series, which are dark and horribly intense and very journeying. There's and what's shocking isn't necessarily the content; it's that someone's thought to write that content. That's what we kept thinking. So we're following the Tour de France at the moment really carefully. That's a few late nights and a few really early mornings watching the catch up with my daughter Elkie loves watching the replay. So a bit more lighthearted, you know. It's a bit of yin and yang at the moment, but yeah.
I love it. Well, Rowly Milhinch, owner and winemaker, SCION Wines, thank you so much for being part of the journey. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Kev. It's been good fun.